Regardless of the path his master chose, he vowed to remain unshakably by his side, even if it meant sacrificing his very life. Nathan Fong's heart swelled at this declaration, and he quickly expressed his gratitude to Ethan Han for such unwavering trust. He reciprocated the sentiment, emphasizing that he would exhaust every ounce of his power to shield everyone from any future harm. Overwhelmed with joy, the Ice Demon's eyes welled with tears as he confessed to his master how truly happy he was to serve by his side. Feeling a touch of embarrassment at the emotional display, the protagonist settled onto his bed and gently asked his friend to hold back his tears. Despite the poignant moment, Nathan Fong's mind remained captivated, a sense of profound confusion still clouding his understanding of everything. He found himself pondering, what exactly was this concept of a world level, when broken down into its most fundamental terms? A world level, as it was explained, is a direct measure of a world's recognition by the gods. Across the vast universe, countless worlds exist. However, not all are graced with divine favor. It is only when intelligent life first emerges within a world that it begins to capture their attention. But this initial notice is merely that attention, and nothing more substantial. It was compared to a person casually discovering a uniquely beautiful insect. Only by conquering the trials set forth by the gods can a world truly earn their favor. Success in these trials brings with it the gifts of a more advanced civilization and immense power. In essence, the more tests that are overcome, the greater the divine favor bestowed upon it, and consequently, the higher its world level becomes. Ethan Han then remarked that based on what his master had observed, the most powerful individuals in their realm only reached approximately level 150, even when armed with the best equipment and legendary class skills. He concluded that this stark reality was a clear indictment of their world's low level, indicating it was practically barren of any divine blessing. Nathan Fong anxiously asked if their situation was truly that bleak, but Ethan Han tried to bolster his master's spirits, assuring him that with his presence there, their future was destined for greatness. Shifting topics, he then brought up the crucial matter of his master's equipment. Ethan Han revealed he had a suggestion on that front, explaining that the gear native to their world was hopelessly archaic. It was utterly insufficient for the challenges that lay ahead, meaning the protagonist needed to urgently upgrade to divine-grade equipment. The term divine grade caught Nathan Fong completely by surprise, and he immediately urged his loyal friend to be more specific. Hanyen began to unravel the secrets of divine equipment, explaining they are typically forged or refined by the devout followers of gods, then imbued with power by their celestial masters. Moreover, he added, these sacred relics possess the potential for continuous enhancement. His words sparked a memory in Ningfeng. Hanyan's necklace bore an inscription hinting at its ability to be upgraded. The Ice Demon affirmed this, revealing the necklace was the dormant core of an ancient, divine-grade artifact. He explained that once Ningfeng reawakened the celestial power within it, the item would officially ascend to the divine grade. A stunned Ningfeng pressed to know the method. Hanyan instructed him to lay his hand upon the necklace, and, through sheer force of will, inscribe the rune that symbolized divine power. Ningfeng immediately took the artifact, channeling his intent to trace the sacred symbol, and soon, a powerful reaction began to surge. It's actually working, Ningfeng murmured in astonishment. Hanyan replied with certainty, of course it is. You are a Lord God, after all, he stated, explaining that runes born from the very essence of the world can only be stirred and commanded by true gods. Outside of this divine authority, not even the most favored champions of the gods could ever hope to accomplish such a feat. Hanyan mused that while his master often seemed to doubt his own identity, this proof might finally grant him some peace. At that very moment, the system announced the artifact's ascension, bestowing upon Ningfeng an additional 1,200 points to his mental attribute, along with a 100% increase in casting speed, a 100% boost in mana regeneration, a 50% rise in magic resistance, and a 20% improvement in his spell critical hit rate. The artifact now completely ignored durability loss, and its wielder's normal attacks were infused with the element of water, carrying a 20% chance to inflict a freezing effect, while also granting him access to powerful new spells like Ice Wall, Ice Spear, Explosion, Ice Arrow, and Cold Tide. Nathan Feng stares in disbelief. He realizes with a jolt that the 12 mental points from this one item are almost equivalent to his entire current attribute total. And that wasn't even the full extent of its power. The necklace was brimming with several other formidable features. Hayden, however, offers a different perspective, a hint of ambition in his voice. He remarks that it's a true shame the item is merely of legendary quality, suggesting that once he acquires suitable materials, he can help Nathan enhance it to an even greater level. As for the other pieces of the set, our protagonist will need to track down the remaining components to unlock its full potential. As night deepens, Nathan confesses to his friend, admitting that Hayden constantly reminds him of how much he has yet to learn. Hayden simply responds, "It is my honor to be consulted on my master's doubts." Before they know it, the first rays of dawn are piercing the darkness. Hayden greets his master with a bright good morning, his energy infectious. Nathan observes his friend's high spirits, remarking that he seems to be in excellent shape. Hayden laughs, replying that, as long as he remains by his master's side, he will always be brimming with hope. While brushing his teeth, Nathan reflects on how easily he lost track of time talking with Hayden the previous day. He is struck by the harsh reality that his old world is a universe away from this one, rendering much of his past experience inapplicable. Nevertheless, he is absolutely certain that Hayden remains his most reliable and trustworthy aide. The scene shifts to an undisclosed secret realm, where a terrifying monster is suddenly engulfed by a flash of freezing magic. The colossal creature crashes to the ground, its life extinguished in an instant, leaving the other adventurers completely stunned. A satisfied smile touches Nathan Feng's lips. He muses that the 12-point boost to his mental attributes is truly a game-changer. Professor Logan calls out to him, his voice tinged with astonishment, commenting that what Nathan is accomplishing is nothing short of terrifying. Ceylon crosses her arms, nodding in solemn agreement with the professor. Annihilating a boss-level monster with just a single attack was beyond belief. A slightly flustered Ethan approaches the professor, inquiring if any other secret realms were scheduled for that day. The professor shakes his head, explaining that not only were there none, but their group was already leagues ahead of all the others. In fact, their breakneck pace was causing something of a major stir throughout the entire camp. He mentions with a wry smile that the Academy's committee was practically tearing their hair out over their unprecedented progress. Intrigued, Leo presses the professor for more details, eager to understand the commotion they had unwittingly caused. The professor reminds him that every student at this training camp was considered the absolute cream of the crop. Yet, because Leo's group had concluded their assignment so early, its members had taken the initiative to venture into the camp's secret realms on their own. They relentlessly sought out extra training and knowledge, which had a dramatic effect on their overall power levels. Their strength now vastly surpassed the other teams, leading to a wave of discontent and a formal petition signed by the other students. The petition demanded the immediate start of group rotations for the upcoming month, prompting Julian to remark that most professors would simply ignore such a thing. But Liam interjects, explaining that if the committee hadn't stepped in to hold them back, the situation would be even more chaotic. Apparently, other instructors were so impressed they wanted to join their training sessions, with some even secretly adding their names to the student petitions. They were found out, of course, Julian says with a hearty laugh, guaranteeing that no one would dare try to steal away their star. He gestures toward Assistant Professor Ethan. Just then, Hayden approaches Leo, his master, to discuss the nature of his magic. A flicker of concern crosses Leo's face as he immediately asks if there's a problem, but Hayden simply looks a bit abashed. He replies that there is no issue at all. He was just mesmerized by his master's unique spellcasting techniques. He observed how Leo seemed to manipulate various ideal conditions to perfectly control a spell's effect within an incredibly precise range. Leo lets out a warm laugh, promising that with a few more of their late-night discussions, Hayden's own skills would be sharpened. He was confident his student would be able to improve even further. The scene shifts to the next day, with Leo sitting in a lecture hall. An instructor is at the front, explaining that according to the problem's parameters, the total damage from Ability 1 could be broken down into two distinct parts. The equation involves two types of damage, fixed and continuous, with the fixed portion simply expressed as MA. Meanwhile, the continuous damage component must account for scenarios where the effect is triggered multiple times. The total damage from the first continuous trigger is calculated as M multiplied by B multiplied by T prime, but with each subsequent trigger, the damage after the second activation intensifies, increasing by C points every second. Leo admits to his master that he doesn't understand a thing, but Master Nolan simply smiles, revealing this is his favorite subject. He calls it tactical actuarial science, explaining that its applications extend far beyond simple combat scenarios. It is a discipline that weaves together the core principles of mathematics, physics, biology, and even topography. Leo quietly speculates to his friend that perhaps it's because the overall power level of their world is still relatively undeveloped. Lacking overwhelming power, people are forced to be meticulously resourceful, making the absolute most of everything they possess. This means learning how to inflict maximum damage with limited mana and discovering new applications for otherwise restricted abilities. It's about seizing a fleeting opportunity to snatch victory from the jaws of a seemingly hopeless battle. Master Nolan understands that not every student needs to grasp these complex theories on such a deep level. However, he recognizes that their entire training system, the very thing that forges them, is built upon these very foundations. A system that has, without a doubt, cultivated countless exceptional adventurers. This revelation leaves Leo completely stunned. He reasons that, if his master holds this knowledge in such high regard, it must be something truly extraordinary. And with that realization, he vows to study it with everything he has. At that very moment, the bell rings, signaling the end of the lesson. The professor announces that class is over for the day, dismissing the students from the lecture hall. Later, as Leo is walking with Walter, they unexpectedly cross paths with Kane, who seems genuinely surprised to see him. Leo asks his friend if Kane is one of their classmates, but can't help but wonder if the senior student is actually there to see him. After all, during their entire time together at the training camp, Kane had barely spoken a single word to him, a man he'd barely ever acknowledged, so Ningfeng couldn't help but wonder why the blonde swordsman appeared so incredibly on edge. However, Leo bowed deeply, explaining he had come to express his profound gratitude, for without the protagonist's intervention, his brother and the entire Azure Sharp Guild would have been annihilated. Feeling a wave of awkwardness, Ningfeng replied that their meeting was merely a coincidence and that he didn't need to travel so far just to offer thanks. Leo painfully recalled how, because of his brother's influence, he had always maintained a cold distance from Ningfeng. He had even looked down upon any students who associated with him. Now, looking back, he realized the true fool had been himself all along. He confessed that if he had only tried to approach Ningfeng sooner, the Azure Sharp Guild might never have fallen into such a desperate situation. Intrigued by this sudden confession, Ningfeng sensed that Leo had something more significant to say. After all, he knew they shared no real connection, leaving him puzzled as to what they could possibly discuss. Reaching into his coat, the blonde swordsman presented a small object, stating that he had prepared a humble gift to show his gratitude. He insisted that it wasn't much, but he sincerely hoped the protagonist would accept it as a token of his respect. Suddenly, the item erupted in a brilliant, blinding light, leaving both Ningfeng and Hanyen completely stunned by its power. It was another fragment of the heart of the world. The sight triggered a memory for Ningfeng, recalling his friend's explanation that, in general, when a world shatters, pieces of its very core, the heart of the world, are often scattered across the cosmos. He also remembered being told that if he could gather enough of these fragments, he could forge a key to open a gateway to a brand new world. A realization struck Ningfeng. Professor Jie Yan must have used this exact method to unlock the entrance to that secret realm. He reasoned that while she may not have fully understood the principles behind it at the time, this had to be the answer. He also concluded that perhaps the invaders who stormed that secret realm were hunting for these very fragments. Hanyen confirmed his theory, beginning to explain. She revealed that the heart of the world is considered a critical, immensely valuable resource in the higher worlds, which is precisely why those intruders were so desperately searching for them. However, since Ningfeng was the one who had first conquered the secret realm, its treasures belonged to him. The very laws of the universe recoiled, expelling the intruders and casting them back to the worlds from which they came. Leo reveals a crucial detail. The fragment was a hard-won prize his brother claimed from within a secret realm. He stresses that its power was never used recklessly, a fact compounded by information from Professor Gray. The professor had mentioned the Pradas recently conquered a similar domain, which is why Leo believes the artifact is now in the safest hands. Nolan Feng clutched the fragment, offering his sincere thanks to the blonde-haired senior, admitting he truly cherished the gift. Sometime later, standing before the shimmering entrance to a hidden dimension, our hero declares, "This is the place." The fragment had guided him there. Sienna, utterly taken aback, couldn't hide her astonishment. She marveled at how quickly Nolan Feng had deciphered the fragment's purpose, vowing that if she ever found anything similar, she would contact him without a moment's hesitation. A faint smile touched Nolan's lips. That was exactly what he wanted to hear. At that moment, Hayden's voice echoed in his mind, making it clear that his own condition remained perilously unstable. He explained his urgent need to absorb more energy from the world's core, yet offered reassurance as long as his master remained untainted by darkness. With that, there was nothing to truly fear. Resolute, they stepped as one through the shimmering portal. Nolan carried a heavy resolve. The sooner he could help Hayden restore his full strength, the more formidable his ally would be in the battles to come. As they stepped into the secret realm, the entire group was left speechless by the breathtaking landscape, making them wonder if this could truly be a secret realm. The scenery was just too magnificent. Hayden, his curiosity piqued, asked his master what could be happening. It seemed the realm was completely untouched by destruction. Nolan immediately turned to his ethereal companion, asking if this was the first time he had ever witnessed such a place. Hayden confirmed that it was. As they ventured deeper through the pristine world, they eventually came upon a colossal, impossibly high wall. They stopped before its immense shadow, and soon, everyone began to wonder if this place was a lost city, once home to humanity. A cleric's voice, laced with uncertainty, questioned her companion whether the figures before them could possibly be mere mortals. Ua offered a simple theory, a teleportation, but Hanyen, addressing her master, swiftly dismissed the notion as an impossibility. Her logic was sound. A fragment of the world's heart, she explained, is a key bound to a single lock its own corresponding world. The only alternative, she mused, was a grand illusion. A thought that hung in the air as Ning Feng cautiously advanced toward the imposing gate. His approach was cut short by a sharp command. A guard, stepping into his path, demanded to know his point of origin. Caught off guard, Ning Feng stood silent, a flicker of unease on his face. The guard's expression hardened, his voice dropping as he posed a critical question. Were they, by some chance, adventurers from another world? The question, so direct and unexpected, sparked a flicker of intrigue in the protagonist. He couldn't help but ask how the man had deduced their nature. The guard replied that their unfamiliar attire and hesitant answers made it quite obvious. It was, he declared, an elementary deduction. At that moment, Shi Yan stepped forward, her voice sharp as she challenged the guard with her own inquiry. She pressed him, asking if travelers from other worlds were a common sight. He conceded that they appeared from time to time, a casual yes hanging in the air. But his gaze lingered on her as he added a pointed remark, noting that few were as insolent as she. The teacher's composure instantly shattered at being called a brat. "I am not a child," she retorted, her voice echoing with indignation. Unfazed, the guard simply gestured them through, stepping aside. He granted them entry, but his words carried a heavy warning. They were free to explore, but causing any trouble would have dire consequences. He stated grimly that he could not guarantee their survival otherwise. His final instruction was to the protagonist, keep a tight leash on the child. Don't let her wander off alone, he advised. The repeated jab sent a fresh wave of fury washing over Xiyan, her hands clenching at her sides. Walking through the city gates, Ning Feng absorbed the bustling scene, remarking that this world clearly had its own adventurers. That, he realized, explained their calm acceptance of otherworldly visitors. They were an anomaly, but not an unprecedented one. Their path eventually led them to the city square, which was dominated by a colossal statue. Drawn by its grandeur, they moved closer to decipher the inscription at its base. The bronze plaque bore a name etched in elegant script, a monument dedicated to a figure known as Arlita, hailed as the brave daughter of the heavens and guardian of the empire. The lofty titles resonated with the protagonist, stirring a deep sense of curiosity within him, and remarks to Hayden that something is deeply unsettling, as he has never encountered such inscriptions on a plaque before. And yet, he can somehow read them perfectly. The Ice Demon clarifies that this is a connection, established by the world's very heart, which also confirms they haven't been transported to some other dimension. Ian, still deciphering the plaque, announces that there's more. It also recounts the incredible deeds of the hero, immortalized by the statue, explaining that in the year 1537 of the stellar calendar, a demonic tide surged forth, advancing without mercy, plunging the entire world into an abyss of darkness and fear. But at the twilight of all days, with despair hanging heavy in the air, only Arlita the Brave dared to traverse those dark times. Unstoppable demons fell before her blade, and slowly, light returned to the ravaged land. Melodies of joy finally replaced the silence, and Arlita's heroic triumphs were carved into stone. This was done so that all future generations would remember her glory, a light shining through the ages, never to be faded by time. The protagonist murmurs that this world was indeed viciously attacked by monsters. However, thanks to the solitary figure depicted in the statue, the invaders were vanquished, and peace was finally restored. The teacher concedes that it seems to be the case, as that is precisely what the plaque's inscription declares. The cleric, deeply moved by the story of a heroine who defeated an entire monstrous army alone, whispers that it is an incredible tale, befitting a true hero. In the meantime, the berserker silently wonders if the adventurers native to this world are truly that overwhelmingly powerful. Just then, Raymond's eyes lock onto a tree. He urges everyone to wait as Jackson quickly rushes to his friend, demanding to know what happened. Raymond explains that while everyone was engrossed in the statue's tale, a single word blazed into existence on the tree, a chilling command to run, only to vanish an instant later. The protagonist also moves closer. He looks to Raymond, demanding to know if he truly saw the word run materialize on that tree. He confirms the haunting truth before vanishing into thin air, insisting that what he saw was no mere figment of his imagination. A chilling realization dawns upon our hero as his gaze sweeps across the inhabitants of this strange realm. An unsettling feeling creeps into his soul, a sense that something is fundamentally wrong. Just then, the grand statue before them begins to tremble and crack. From the crumbling stone, monstrous forms emerge, and the protagonist instantly shatters the illusion for his companions. He reveals that their entire reality had been a carefully crafted mirage, yet he is baffled as to how such a feat was accomplished, especially since he had detected no trace of undead magic. The creatures, however, give him no time to ponder, lunging forward with primal fury. His sword becomes a blur of steel, effortlessly cleaving the lesser beasts in two, while Zane intercepts a vicious strike from one of the undead. But his confidence turns to horror as his mighty axe shatters upon impact, making him realize this is no ordinary foe. Fear washes over him as he sees he's outmatched. The undead monster seizes the opening, charging at the defenseless berserker. Yet, the attack is halted mid-swing. Zane stares in disbelief as the undead warrior is encased in a thick layer of ice, frozen solid. This was the chilling work of Hanyen, who only moments before had been assessing the grim situation. He had warned our protagonist that the spectral adventurers they faced were not of this world. They seemed to originate from a much higher level plane, and he feared the protagonist's comrades stood no chance against such might. Overwhelmed by this impossible threat, Nolan turns to his friend, his voice laced with desperation, asking what they could possibly do. It is then that Hanyen offers a solution, proposing to use his remaining essence to temporarily manifest a physical form. He would join their fight to turn the tide. A faint smile touches our hero's lips as he agrees to leave everything in Hanyen's capable hands. The sudden appearance of the formidable ice demon startles his friends, but the protagonist quickly urges them to remain calm. He explains that Hanyen is a trusted ally, a powerful being he has summoned from another dimension to aid their cause. With a calm demeanor, Hanyen greets the stunned adventurers, stating it is a pleasure to meet them and that they will be allies for a time. Without another word, he glides to the front line, raises his crystalline staff, and unleashes the chilling might of his power upon the undead horde, creating several ice stakes that immediately start striking the undead UA. Is impressed, and comments that the ice demon's magic is simply incredible, and that his power is far beyond legendary level abilities. However, someone with a dark energy appears and easily shatters the ice stakes. Arlita the Brave emerges. Zion quickly shouts, and warns everyone that the person who just arrived is none other than the woman from the statue. Arlita comments to the ice demon that he seems like a strange mage to be the strongest among them, but makes it clear that against the edge of her blade, his strength means absolutely nothing. Hanyen tells her not to talk nonsense and says he is not the strongest there, but that to deal with her he alone is more than enough. Arlita becomes furious, and while unleashing her terrifying power, questions the mage whether he really wants to fight a warrior alone, and which god granted him such courage. Hanyen mocks her, saying it is exactly as she said. The warrior grows even more enraged, and remarks that Hanyen is just another fool who blindly believes in gods. She then asks him if he truly thinks these so-called gods care about him. The ice demon looks at the protagonist and sees that he is smiling. However, Arlita wastes no time and lunges at him, shouting that he is a fool for daring to look away. In the middle of a fight, Hanyen begins to use his power, and an icy aura spreads through the area as she advances. Arlita notices that her speed has slowed, and wonders if it is some kind of water magic-based deceleration effect. However, she does not allow herself the luxury of pondering and quickly channels her power into her weapon, breaking Hanyen's ability. While questioning whether the weapon on the warrior's arm is the source of her power, the ice demon channels his freezing magic. Kaylan then unleashes a devastating trifecta of ice magic: the relentless, endless ice ray, the shattering force of glacial explosion, and the binding power of frost fusion. He directs this frozen cataclysm straight at Seraphina, who scoffs at the attempt. In her mind, it's an impossible feat, for she is the master of a divine weapon, Godfall. Yet, her confidence shatters the moment she feels an arcane mark searing itself onto her very chest. A flicker of confusion crosses her face, just as Kaylan snaps his fingers, and a violent explosion erupts not at her, but from within, tearing its way outward. Her scream of pure agony echoes across the battlefield as the divine equipment clatters to the ground, its wielder vanquished. Witnessing this, both William and Evan are rendered utterly speechless, their minds reeling from the sheer shock of the spectacle. They can only think of one word to describe the protagonist's friend's attack: terrifying. Unfazed, Kaylan approaches the weapon left behind by the warrior. He muses that such an artifact is undeniably potent, but it was painfully obvious its previous owner. lacked the true mastery to control it. The instant his fingers make contact with Godfall, a surge of raw energy erupts from the artifact, and a jolt of pure alarm courses through Kaylan. He questions what's happening, but before he can react, his physical form dissolves, drawn completely inside the divine weapon. A mocking laugh echoes from the fallen armor as Seraphina's voice calls the mage an idiot, taunting him for having no concept of the horrors he has just unleashed. She reveals the weapon's true nature, the divine doom, which will now absorb his immense power to fuel her own rebirth, believing that, so long as the divine doom exists, she is essentially immortal. Alistair, seeing his friend vanish into thin air, immediately shifts into high alert. His expression hardens as he calls out for Kaylan, only to hear his friend's voice echo in his mind, urging him to remain calm. Kaylan insists he is all right, quickly explaining that the warrior's weapon unexpectedly began siphoning his energy. The drain was so immense that his physical form simply collapsed. Alistair acknowledges the grim situation, his mind already racing. He resolves to investigate this so-called divine weapon himself. Bending down, he lifts the artifact, observing it with intense focus. As the protagonist grips the weapon, Seraphina's disembodied voice is filled with glee, inwardly mocking them all as utter fools. They are willingly feeding their power into the divine weapon, a feast of energy that means she no longer has to rely on the meager life force of the undead. Nathan Fang reached into her mind, his first telepathic words cutting straight to the point. Was she truly happy? Arlita, both stunned and bewildered, quickly questioned the protagonist, asking if he could genuinely perceive her spectral form. In that same moment, she sensed that her divine weapon had ceased absorbing the surrounding energy. Instead, it trembled violently, as if gripped by an overwhelming fear of the protagonist himself. Nathan recalled the instant he made contact with the divine weapon, how a system screen had materialized before his very eyes. The prompt asked a simple question: did he wish to initiate absorption? A faint smile played on the protagonist's lips. He never suspected that such a formidable weapon was actually one of the legendary remnants of the End. However, he understood that the situation was far from clear, and it would be foolish to rush into absorbing its power. He then pressed Arlita to explain what was truly happening. While miles away, Julian turned to Yue. He wondered what could possibly be unfolding on Nathan's battlefield. As Yue noticed all the undead around them had become unnervingly still, she found the sudden, silent paralysis deeply unsettling. Back on the battlefield, the protagonist awaited an answer. Arlita began her story, explaining that, as he might surmise, her country had once been a place of immense beauty, and though terrifying monsters invaded, she and her comrades had always managed to shield the nation from devastation. After vanquishing one such horde of monsters, she had told her team they had all performed magnificently. Yet, her triumphant mood soured when she noticed one of her friends acting strangely, prompting her to ask what was amiss. Kaylan turned toward her, his eyes wide, and asked if she truly couldn't see the text box hovering directly in front of him. Its message was simple: a god is watching you. The other team members shouted that they saw nothing at all. Arlita, completely shocked, yelled back, asking if he had genuinely been acknowledged by a divine entity. But Kaylan remained lost in astonishment, mesmerized by the system screen that had appeared only for him. As Kaylan fought in the days that followed, new and more cryptic messages began to manifest before him, declaring that the heavens themselves were pleased with his valor and that he had earned divine recognition. He was then offered the choice of a divine blessing, and moments later, to everyone's utter astonishment, Kaylan began to float into the air. An overwhelmingly powerful aura emanated from his form as the blonde warrior turned to reassure his friends. He promised that he would always watch over them from his new place among the gods. One of the warriors in Arlita's squad attempted to console her, urging her not to be overcome with sadness. He explained that with Kaylan's ascension, the gods themselves might now watch over their nation more attentively. Moreover, if they continued to fight with all their might, they too might one day capture the attention of the divine. Arlita offered a faint smile and concurred with her friend's hopeful words. Sometime later, however, that hope would be shattered. The nation had descended into complete chaos, as innumerable demonic creatures swarmed across the entire kingdom. Arlita's team fought with desperate ferocity to resist the monstrous tide and continue their duty of protecting the realm. As she cried out in sheer frustration, she questioned why the demonic assaults only seemed to intensify with each passing day. And why did the gods do nothing? Why had Kaylan not returned to aid them in their darkest hour? Have they forgotten us? A terrified mage asked his comrade, his voice trembling. Are we meant to perish here? Trapped in that relentless hell, Arlita's expression hardened as she responded with a defiant no. She declared that they still possessed one final, desperate hope: After making this proclamation, she journeyed to a forbidden sanctum and stood before the cursed divine weapon. After hearing her story, the protagonist immediately questioned her. He asked if she truly used the forbidden artifact to repel the invading monsters, and if its power had, in turn, cursed the entire country. She affirmed his suspicions, explaining that after she had finally defeated the demonic horde, she wielded the power of darkness itself to restore the nation to its former state. However, she never anticipated that, piece by piece, the very darkness she commanded would begin to consume her consciousness, transforming her nation into a clandestine and terrifying kingdom. Arlita also confessed that ever since, adventurers from other realms would occasionally venture into her domain, only to be forcibly turned into her undead servants by the power of the divine weapon. The protagonist reflected on this, realizing that the power of darkness always comes at an extraordinarily high price. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a disturbance in the air, and he turned to witness a figure stepping through a shimmering portal right before him. This individual was none other than Kaylan, Arlita's long-lost friend, who immediately directed his greeting toward the protagonist. Kaylan stated that the gauntlet Ningfeng now possessed belonged to him, and he asked for its return. Arlita, recognizing her old friend, was overcome with shock, wondering if it could truly be him after so much time had passed. Ningfeng simply smiled, making it perfectly clear to Kaylan that the gauntlet he now held was his and his alone. The blonde warrior chuckled, suggesting that there must be some kind of misunderstanding. He emphasized that he had intentionally left the weapon there to undergo a refinement ritual, a claim that intrigued both Ningfeng and Arlita. They both pondered what in the world this refinement ritual Kaylan mentioned could possibly be. The blonde man paused for a brief moment, and then a terrifying aura began to radiate from his body. He coldly asked the protagonist if he was hard of hearing, stating that he had already made his ownership clear. He repeated that the gauntlet was his, and then asked if the protagonist was planning to offer himself up as raw material for his refinement process. At that exact moment, Hanyen sensed Kaylan's powerful aura. She commented that the power she was feeling was, without a doubt, the true and unblemished essence of the Holy Spirit. Arlita fell to her knees, pleading with the protagonist to allow her to uncover the truth behind this entire situation. She begged for his help, but Ningfeng simply smiled and asked why Arlita did not take action herself. The Broken Queen was baffled by the protagonist's question, while Kaylan simply observed, his gaze fixed on the protagonist. He seemed fascinated by Ningfeng's calm smile. Ningfeng then turned back to Arlita, making his intentions perfectly clear. He reveals that he holds the power to grant her a fleeting physical form, but he warns that, in the end, she would inevitably dissolve into nothingness. Unafraid, Arlita cries out that she accepts the risk. She implores Ningfeng to give her a body, declaring her readiness to face any and all consequences. Ningfeng then instructs her to raise her head as he invokes his ability, the dark ritual of soul seizure. This forbidden art channels spiritual energy to seize control of a target's mind, forging them into a powerful, albeit temporary, vessel. As the ritual's dark energy takes hold, a physical body materializes around Arlita's spirit, a sight that leaves even the stoic Kaylan utterly stunned. Arlita gazes down, examining her newfound form. She marvels that the power of darkness is truly a formidable force. Ningfeng clarifies to the warrior that her mind will remain her own, assuring her that she will retain complete control of her body. Turning to him, she offers her sincere thanks. Kaylan, still reeling from the shock, demands to know how his long-lost friend has suddenly reappeared before him. Without hesitation, Arlita begins to channel immense power through her divine weapon, turning her attention back to her friend. She states that his previous words were unclear and demands that he explain himself properly this time. Kaylan questions Arlita, asking if she has fallen under the sway of some malevolent deity. He presses her, wanting to know what Ningfeng has done to her, but Arlita gives him no time to speak, charging at him with her full might. Kaylan desperately attempts to defend himself, but he is completely overwhelmed by his friend's ferocious assault. He coughs up blood as the force of the blow sends him hurtling into the ground. Arlita levels her weapon at him. She demands to know why he was absent when the monsters laid siege to their kingdom. Why did he only choose to appear now? And what exactly did he mean by a refinement ritual? Pinned to the ground, Kaylan cries out that he never abandoned her, pleading with her to trust him. He begins to explain that at that fateful time, he was trapped in the midst of another arduous trial. It became a matter of survival for him the moment he understood the catastrophe unfolding within her kingdom. By then, however, it was already far too late. The blonde man insists that Arlita could never comprehend the crushing hardships he has been forced to endure. Ever since he was torn from the world he once called home, and despite his current standing, as one of the most powerful beings in existence, before a true god, he is nothing more than an utter failure. He implores Arlita, desperate for her to grasp the suffocating pressure and absolute helplessness of his position. Her expression hardening, Arlita demands that he cease his evasions, ordering him to answer her question directly and immediately. Was he, Kaylan, truly after her divine weapon? Leaping to his feet, he shouts his denial. He frantically explains that he had only left a simple magical mark on Godfall. When the divine weapon subsequently vanished, he was able to sense its new location. He begs his old friend not to condemn him for this action. His only desire is to grow stronger with Godfall, terrified that otherwise, the god he serves will inevitably cast him aside. Then comes the devastating reveal. At the very moment he marked the divine weapon, Arlita was already dead, slain alongside every single one of their friends. Yet, within the secrecy of his own mind, Kaylan scoffs at his friend, inwardly calling her a naive fool. He muses that if it were not for the god's overwhelming power, dealing with them all would have been laughably easy. But now, sensing an immense and encroaching evil, he turns his pleas to his divine master, begging that, for the sake of his unwavering loyalty, he not be forsaken, but instead be granted a divine punishment mighty enough to annihilate everyone present. Before the prayer can even fade, his friend strikes with savage force, causing him to erupt a great torrent of blood. The brutal and sudden turn of events leaves both Wang Yue and Xiaoyan completely paralyzed with shock. Arlita then turns, approaching the protagonist. She gracefully kneels before him, expressing her gratitude for this singular opportunity. She proclaims that because of him, she and her people can finally awaken from their seemingly endless, tormenting nightmare. Stepping forward, Ningfeng retrieves the divine weapon, his voice firm as he declares that he now wishes to know the location of the world's very heart, preserved within this fallen kingdom. He then turns to Alara, urging her to aid his companions while there is still time, knowing they have a storm of questions for her. The solemn warrior confesses to Aiden, her voice heavy with regret, that she once believed it was a profound honor for Kaylan to have been chosen by the gods, but that honor turned to ash, as in the end, they were simply abandoned. It was in that desolation that she faced a harsh truth. The gods do not watch over all worlds with the same benevolent gaze. As she prepares to depart, Alara makes a final plea, stating that regardless of what Kaylan has become, he is still one of her own people, and she begs for the chance to grant him a final release, to sever his ties to this torment, so that his spirit may finally find peace and journey with her into the quiet beyond. At that moment, Aiden turns, his eyes catching the troubled expression on Willow's face, and he immediately asks what's wrong. Willow quietly admits that she was just thinking, even with a god's blessing. Alara's world was still brought to ruin, and she wonders if they, too, will one day face that same inevitable fate. Aiden offers a reassuring smile, promising her that such a future will never come to pass, and tells her not to worry. To lighten the mood, he playfully reminds her that he's still waiting on her promise to treat him to a spectacular meal. Lily smiles, assuring him it's a promise she fully intends to keep, before turning to Professor Evelyn. She asks if they can finish their meal before heading back, and the professor readily agrees. Evelyn even confesses to feeling a bit hungry herself, which prompts Lily to eagerly explore the area, hoping to find some unique local delicacies. But elsewhere, within the silent ruins of the kingdom, a tear in reality suddenly rips through the sky, and from its depths, a figure emerges. It is Kaylan, now radiating an overwhelming and terrifying power, and he remarks with cold detachment that he has arrived a little too late. But a cruel smile touches his lips, for at the very least, he can still recall the faint image of the one who interfered. Within that vessel, his thoughts drift back to the protagonist, pondering if he could truly be the legendary, omnipotent mage. Regardless, Kaylan remains certain that the young man is still trapped within this kingdom, and that for him, there is no escape. Sometime later, a high-stakes meeting convenes among the leaders of the major guilds. Warren Yue and Luke Ping feel a palpable sense of apprehension, as this marks their first major council as official representatives of their guilds. Linnea speaks first, noting that according to Professor Shaw's report, it is theorized that the gods select certain chosen individuals from across different worlds, granting them immense power and even a path to ascend to a higher realm. However, this divine power exists for one purpose alone: to make more mortals believe in the gods. In the cold eyes of such beings, these so-called chosen ones are nothing more than expendable tools and pawns. Yuna makes it painfully clear that even if one becomes a favorite of the gods, the very real danger of being cast aside and destroyed still looms. She concludes with a chilling certainty that, in the end, every person must rely solely on themselves. Linnea then adds that during their most recent expedition, the enemy's strength vastly exceeded all their calculations. She admits that they only managed to overcome the insurmountable challenge thanks to the efforts of Nicholas Fang. Even so, she knows that in the coming battles, they will likely face foes who are stronger still, enemies who seem utterly invincible. And although the protagonist is their ally, if they continue to depend on him as their only hope, placing the entire burden on the shoulders of one young man, she cannot help but feel an overwhelming sense of guilt. At that moment, most of the guild leaders lower their heads in shame, realizing they are demanding far too much from Nicholas Fang. However, Yui raises her hand, politely requesting permission to speak. She then states that everyone present is fully aware that the protagonist recently summoned a powerful being from another world, an entity that has studied the complex discipline of tactical actuarial science. After weighing their own strength against the might of the monsters, they finally reached a solemn conclusion. Evelyn's expression turned grave as she revealed a chilling truth. By all normal standards, their world should have been annihilated 30 years ago. A palpable wave of alarm swept through the leaders, each one stunned by Evelyn Wang's shocking declaration. An outraged Serafina Ling shot to her feet, demanding to know precisely what Evelyn was implying. The young woman explained that more than 80 years prior, the secret realms had violently merged with their reality. In the chaos that followed, humanity suffered a blow of unprecedented scale, and it was from this crucible that the first adventurers emerged. However, Evelyn Wang made it painfully clear that even then, humanity was fighting from a position of overwhelming disadvantage against the monstrous threat. She emphasized that their survival was owed entirely to the countless sacrifices and tireless efforts of their predecessors. A legacy, she added, that included everyone present in the room, which had allowed humanity to cling to existence until this very day. She went on to explain that this visitor from another world had shared a dire assessment. He had stated that the monsters they had faced for so long had already evolved beyond what their world was meant to withstand. The simple fact that they had not yet been extinguished and were still able to fight was, in itself, a miracle. With a fire in her eyes, Evelyn Wang declared her own belief that as long as a glimmer of hope remained, they could keep that miracle alive. She reminded them that their world had been defended by generations of heroes. For 80 years, they held the line, and now, it was their turn to carry the torch. As her speech concluded, she took her seat. Suddenly feeling a pang of embarrassment, she quickly asked if she had said something out of line, but her words were met with thunderous applause from all the leaders. They proclaimed that Evelyn Wang possessed the spirit of a true heroine. Alara Yuan smiled, remarking to General Valerius that selecting the young Miss Wang was indeed a stroke of wisdom, adding that she felt as if the fighting spirit of her own youth had been rekindled. Baron Wang then turned to Master Yan, posing a grim question. In other words, these monsters are so difficult to defeat because they have already surpassed the limits of everyone here? Master Yan let out a soft laugh, admitting with a wry smile that he was not entirely sure of the answer. But after absorbing Madame Evelyn Yue's declaration, his spirit, once broken, was reignited with a burning fury. Vincent declared his unwavering belief that every person present shared the sentiment of President Yue. He then pivoted the discussion, announcing that the immediate agenda was to forge a strategy for confronting the gods. After all, the recent catastrophe had been a brutal lesson. The gods were not the benevolent saviors they had been led to believe. In another dimension, Kaylan found himself in the protagonist's world, baffled as to why an omnipotent mage would reside in such an unremarkable place. It was a primitive world, one that seldom warranted a second glance from beings of his stature. It was then that Kaylan felt a familiar resonance, the faint, yet unmistakable presence of the secret realm of judgment. Within this very world, he decided this overlooked planet would be the perfect place to establish his new sanctuary. Elsewhere, at the ruins of the Blue Sharp Guild, Sean reflected on how his brother's hard-won legacy had crumbled in a single night. This tragedy fueled his resolve. He vowed to grow strong enough to restore the guild to its former glory. Yet, in that very moment of solemn reflection, his determination was interrupted. A shimmering portal tore through the air before him, and from it, Kaylan emerged with an air of casual power. The being commented on the unexpected presence of life, while Sean, on high alert, felt a surge of apprehension. He immediately demanded to know the identity of this blonde stranger and the purpose of his intrusion. The mysterious figure simply advised Sean to remain calm, introducing himself as the master of that secret realm. "I am the one," he stated coolly, "that your kind refers to as a god." The adventurer's mind raced at the revelation. He recalled a fundamental rule of that secret domain. It was forbidden for two individuals to enter simultaneously. Staring at Kaylan, he recognized the sinister aura, cloaked in a divine form, a god he had witnessed in a recording. A god who possessed absolute control over the power flowing within that very realm. Understanding dawned on him. Sean fell to his knees, asking if Kaylan had appeared in response to his desperate prayers. Kaylan simply laughed, retorting that prayers were merely the pleas of the weak, and that Stellan must prove his strength and faith are truly worthy of such a divine blessing. Stellan fervently pleads for him to issue any command, vowing that he will do his utmost to fulfill it. Kaylan reminded himself that the omnipotent mage was an intelligent being, and until he could discern its true nature, he could not afford to act recklessly, as the power of an incarnation was far weaker than his true form. Realizing he could use a pawn on the board, Kaylan then gave Stellan his first task, to find Nathan. Stellan is visibly shaken to hear that name but quickly composes himself. Kaylan remarks that he never expected him to know of the mage, a fact that now saves him a great deal of trouble. Stellan apologizes, stating that he does not know him well enough to provide any meaningful information. Kaylan dismisses this, saying it does not matter, and that from this moment on, Stellan is responsible for monitoring him and must immediately report any and all unusual activity. His tone then grows grave, making it crystal clear to Stellan that he must not, under any circumstances, alert the mage. He warned that this person's true identity could be that of a malevolent god who has laid waste to countless worlds. The adventurer is staggered by this revelation, his thoughts racing. However, Kaylan already knew that. When he first sensed the intrusion into the secret realm of judgment, he had launched a search across the divine realm. But his efforts were thwarted by a strange force, which he now believed was the omnipotent mage concealing his tracks. He then asks Stellan, who completed the trial in that world. He replies that it was a friend of this so-called evil god. Kaylan calls it a pity, musing that such an honor should have rightfully belonged to Stellan. Instead, it was stolen by the claws of that dark entity. However, he tells him not to despair, and emphasizes that he can help him reclaim that glory. For that, he needs only a sworn oath of loyalty. Stellan wastes no time, shouting his vow of fealty to the god before him. Later, Stellan and Prado meet, and the blonde-haired man immediately begins to speak of Nathan, that this person claims to be the vessel for a true primal spirit, and that this spirit specifically sent him to covertly gather intelligence on Valerius, who recalled his belief that such incarnations could only exist for a fleeting moment. Aiden explained that gods typically rely on their followers as vessels, as their shared minds create a bond that prevents rejection, allowing their presence to endure for far longer. Caleb was visibly stunned by this revelation. He confessed to his friend that he assumed gods were like Valerius, able to inhabit anyone as a vessel. Valerius then questioned Ethan, asking if he felt no fear of being discovered by such a powerful deity. He replied that he had tested the entity a few times, and it didn't seem omniscient, unless it was all a ruse. Still, he urged Valerius to remain vigilant. Aiden then told Valerius that new followers like Ethan, who possess a fragile faith, would soon appear, making their spiritual connection dangerously unstable. Yet this very instability meant their true motives were not easily exposed. Caleb suddenly grabbed Ethan's arm. He smiled, thanking him for relaying such a critical piece of information as the young man flushed with embarrassment. He clarified to Valerius that as the world's benefactor, this was simply his duty to perform. Therefore, undertaking this task was no burden. However, he mused internally that even when faced with a god, Valerius showed no panic, a composure that made his true identity all the more remarkable. In a moment of honesty, he recalled his own brother had once investigated Valerius with great intensity. He found it hard to believe such a person could be a malevolent god. Valerius, meanwhile, thought that with his identity confirmed, he felt a strange sense of tranquility, knowing that since these divine beings had sought him out, he must see this conflict through to its end. After returning home, Caleb spoke with the Ice Demon. He remarked that Ethan possessed the unique ability to remain close to the true essence of this Holy Spirit, for now, but he understands that with every passing moment of inaction, the danger will only escalate. Hayden reveals to Nolan that, in truth, they possess a profound advantage over the other deities of this world. Nolan Feng, his interest piqued, urges him to elaborate on this point. The Ice Demon explains that when higher beings descend into a lower realm, their power is inherently constrained by the universal laws. This is a cosmic principle that not even the gods themselves can defy to amplify their influence in the mortal world. They are forced to expand their ranks of worshippers. However, Nolan's existence is fundamentally different from theirs. Because he is native to this plane, he can unleash his full, untethered power, and as long as the gods' followers do not ascend to a higher level of strength, they will never pose a true threat to Nolan, he emphasizes. He stresses that the secret realm of judgment is under divine protection, and that the assault Nolan experienced there was an attack that actually traversed time and space, colliding directly with the divine realm of the Holy Spirit's true essence. If that sacred essence remains concealed within its sanctuary, their enemies will be powerless to act against it. Therefore, their most strategic move is to devise a method to lure it out from the confines of the secret realm of judgment. Nolan Feng confirms to Hayden that he understands completely, and that they will now formulate a plan. Their strategy will be built upon this newfound approach, with Nolan sharing every piece of intelligence he possesses. He then reflects that, according to his friend's insight, the world he inhabits is more like his home ground than he ever imagined. He knows he has mastered dozens of forbidden spells, so confronting a battle of this scale should not present a significant challenge. However, there is one particular ability in the enemy's arsenal that causes him concern: the pressure of the strong. This technique unleashes a crushing wave of psychic pressure, temporarily disabling any target weaker than its wielder. The greater the disparity in power, the longer the victim is left utterly incapacitated and vulnerable. Nolan Feng recognizes it instantly from the description. It's a potent and dangerous control-based ability, a strategy that depends entirely on overwhelming his opponents, yet his own true power level remains dangerously low. He knows that if an enemy ever exploits that single vulnerability, he won't have a moment to unleash his ultimate, forbidden magic. A chilling thought solidifies in his mind. For true safety, I must master a spell that can shield me from mental assaults. Yet, he's keenly aware that such enchantments are incredibly rare and nearly impossible to acquire, a grim reality he considers as he rises to his feet. He turns to Kaylan, stating his need to return to their sanctuary, but not without asking if Kaylan is certain their location remains hidden. The ice demon calmly approaches the capybara-like creature, his hand gently stroking its fur. He then reveals to Evan that this is no simple animal, but a demon from the Shadow Realm, known as the Chaotic Terror Beast. Kaylan explains that this being naturally projects a powerful field of chaos, warping the space around it. This field effectively acts as a perfect cloak, blocking every form of detection, leaving Evan utterly stunned by the revelation. "That's absolutely terrifying," Evan manages to say, to which Kaylan simply replies with a solemn nod. He affirms the beast's true nature as a high-level demon lord, possessing power that eclipses even the mightiest realm bosses. At the mention of its ability to effortlessly annihilate their entire world, a fresh wave of terror washes over Evan. However, Kaylan produces an item, telling Evan not to fear, as the beast has been completely pacified since its subjugation by Prada. Its temperament is now so stable that every trace of its once overwhelming dark aura has completely vanished. He then tosses the item over the creature's head, explaining that his people once lived among numerous hot springs. "It loves when I help it bathe like this," Kaylan says, suggesting that this shared ritual has forged their bond, and that perhaps Evan could try it himself. The still-shaken adventurer internally questions how he could ever hope to command such a relationship with a world-ending demon. All this time, he had considered himself powerful, but this single revelation completely shatters his perception of strength. His perspective irrevocably shifts as he finally comprehends the truly formidable presence that is Kaylan. Just as this realization dawns on him, the one known as Prada makes their grand entrance. He explains to Dylan that the item in his hands is a reward, a prize earned from the treacherous trial realm. With a sense of purpose, he urges him to use it, a rare skill book containing the legendary technique, Shadow Blade Storm. This powerful art allows the user to instantly surge into a state of hyperspeed, spinning twin daggers with the untamed fury of a tempest. For the duration of the skill, it unleashes a devastating volley of high-damage strikes on all enemies caught within its whirlwind of destruction. As an added benefit, all of the user's resistances are fortified by a full 100% while the technique is active. But that's not all. There is also the indomitable Battle Spirit Bandana, a legendary artifact that grants a bonus of 35 to strength. It also provides a 50% surge in attack speed and a 10% increase to critical hit probability. Furthermore, when the wearer is attacked, there is a chance to unleash a special effect, summoning a spectral clone of the Battle Spirit to aid them in combat. For a moment, Dylan is overcome with pure elation, shouting his profound thanks to the proctor for this immense gift. He then swears a solemn oath to relentlessly pursue greater power, promising to become an unstoppable weapon in his master's service. He declares that if any so-called deity dares to oppose his master, he is prepared to lay down his own life to ensure the proctor's safety. Nathan quietly considers that, thanks to the shocking precedent established in Arlita's secret realm of judgment, a change is underway. He observes that the general attitude and perception toward the deities have fundamentally shifted among them. For example, when Dylan was informed of the coming of the true Holy Spirit of Essence, he showed absolutely no fear or hesitation. From this, Nathan understands that challenging him will no longer be a simple matter for the gods and their followers. The proctor retrieves another gleaming artifact, placing it upon the summoned beast, his mind turning to the base's secure network. He knows it possesses the most advanced security measures and resolves to search for any spells capable of resisting mental assaults. While he seeks this crucial information, far away in a secret trial realm, Kaylan is observing a cityscape through a swirling portal. He muses that this world seems strangely familiar, recalling that its human inhabitants are incredibly weak. They were rendered almost helpless during the previous monster cataclysm, a display of frailty that caused the gods to lose all faith in them. After a period of intense observation, he finally withdrew his focus from that particular realm. He was now certain that no divine being, not even the renowned omnipotent mage, had lent any aid to its human inhabitants. He understood then that this meant the humanity of that world possessed some inherent, unique quality. A quality that granted them the strength to stand against the monstrous threat. A slow smile spread across his face as he thought, "How very intriguing." He pondered if the omnipotent mage had also recognized this potential, perhaps intending to cultivate this world into his own personal domain. But Kaylan knew he would never permit him to claim such a prize. At that very moment, Silas appeared, trembling and broken. Grievously wounded and struggling to form words, he was immediately questioned by Kaylan about the status of his mission. Silas offered a ragged apology, confessing he was still trapped on the 15th floor, regardless of his desperate efforts. He simply could not break through. A chilling seriousness washed over Kaylan's expression. He asked, with unnerving calm, if Silas had truly perished 100 times on that single floor. Silas could only confirm it, with another pained apology. He then recoiled in fear under the weight of Kaylan's aura, but his master simply turned away, telling Silas not to be afraid. "I am not blaming you," he stated calmly. "In reality, this was a trial designed for you." Silas was astounded by the power of the immortal spirit, an ability he had forged in the crucible of his failure. By continuously meeting his end 100 times on the same floor within the test realm, he had unlocked a new power. Now, when his vitality drops below 15%, he ignores all debilitating effects from injuries for 10 seconds, and his offensive power surges by 30%. In addition, his defensive capabilities are also bolstered by 30%. A low chuckle escaped Kaylan. He explained that those who capture the god's attention can undertake divine trials, and if these missions are successfully completed, they bestow a permanent achievement that enhances one's very being. Some unique achievements can even catalyze a complete metamorphosis. He then let out a sinister laugh, looking at his subordinate and promising, "This is only the beginning. I can grant you things that far exceed the limits of your imagination." Hearing this, the battle-worn adventurer was left utterly stunned. A sense of urgency grips him. He must warn his allies as soon as possible. Meanwhile, deep within the secret realm of the labyrinth of the spirit's thought, Leon Drake recalls the intelligence he had gathered. There were only 2 or 3 secret realms in the entire country that contained the lost spells powerful enough to resist psychic assaults, and the very ground he stood upon was one of them. Panic erupts among the lesser creatures, their desperate shrieks warning their lord that the battle mage is moving alone. He's on the attack again. The demonic lord's fury ignites, realizing that if it does nothing, this human will genuinely believe he can be intimidated. Leon Drake's grip tightens on his sword as he advances. He unleashes his terrifying aura, and the enraged monster roars, calling for Leon to face it head-on. However, as the beast lunges, it suddenly collapses to its knees, immediately begging Leon Drake to spare its life. Leon is stunned by this pathetic display, wondering if this could be some new, insidious form of mental attack. The desperate creature insists it's no trick, pleading with him not to strike and just to be allowed a moment to speak. It then begins to weep, explaining that Leon's mental attribute is so astonishingly high that as a mere low-level demon king, its own psychic attacks have absolutely no effect on him. It wails that other adventurers always form a team and still require at least 2 hours to challenge it. Leon apologizes, explaining that he only desires to obtain a skill book. The creature replies that it cannot control what treasures it will drop. It then asks Leon what will happen if it becomes too depressed, and this despair ends up affecting the item drop rate. Leon feels a profound sense of awkwardness, wondering if he just managed to psychologically break a mind attack boss. After regrouping, he thinks that continuing this way is like searching for a needle in a haystack. It's a futile effort. He then remembers a crucial detail. In the end, there is only a single skill book here for mages, and when it is activated, any teammates channeling magic within a certain radius are blessed with a powerful, shimmering aura. Additionally, after each spell they cast, there's a 35% chance of restoring a significant amount of their mana. With this realization, Aiden concluded that the time had come to level up, and to do so with all possible speed. He understood that the path forward was to master the skill granted by the newly activated Divine Scroll of Apocalypse. This sacred power allows designated believers to receive the blessings of the gods, shattering their inherent limits and dramatically increasing their strength. While observing the system screen, which now displayed his new ability, Aiden noted that not only could he perceive all his believers, but he could also meticulously choose how to bestow his blessings upon them. He could even visualize the effects of the blessing. At that moment, Leon began to be enveloped by a menacing dark aura. The shadowy energy swiftly transformed him into a sinister creature, leaving Aiden completely taken aback. He knew with certainty that his friend would never wish to assume such a ghostly and terrifying appearance. Driven by urgency, he began clicking frantically through the options, seeing that Shadow Protection, Grace Alliance, and Sacred Artifact Awakening were of no use, until his eyes widened at the sight of the Judgment Conquest option. Leon explained that a Judgment Conquest is a power wielded by all deities, used to activate the hidden potential within a target's very being. He also recalled that Aiden himself had once said that conquest is an integral part of the universe's fundamental rules, and within that system, the role of deities is not to command, but rather to act as a guide. For this reason, deities often grant such achievements to those they favor, regardless of whether they are official believers. Therefore, he needed to know if Aiden's conquests would directly infuse his divine power into their very essence. Aiden affirmed that they would, then asked what Leon had in mind, because as he had visualized the conquest, he had glimpsed something extraordinary in Caleb's information panel, a skill called Lucky Magic, which accumulates 100 luck points for teammates. This ability granted an additional 5 points to the luck attribute and, after using a luck-based skill, the target would receive a special status where enemies had a 30% increased probability of yielding rare items upon their defeat. Hearing this, Leon's shock was palpable, and he turned to question his master. Ning Feng's eyes widened in disbelief, realizing he could genuinely perceive achievements from other professions. He questioned if something was fundamentally wrong, but Hanyen clarified that, generally, a deity's insight is confined to achievements linked directly to their own path. The protagonist wondered if, by some miracle, this anomaly was a product of his unique system. The Ice Demon acknowledged that it was a distinct possibility. After all, the true extent and nature of the system remained a profound mystery. Ning Feng simply smiled, saying it was all right. They could afford to study it at a slower pace. He understood that the most urgent task was to aid Changmu Chu in securing this achievement, which could prove to be incredibly useful. Sometime later, deep within the secret realm of the Red Moon, Demon Cave, Mukyu leveled up, his expression one of pure astonishment. The protagonist grinned, promising an explanation later, adding that for now, they had to brace for an immediate boss confrontation. Their summoned creatures relayed an urgent message. The adventurers, from before, were acting like possessed madmen, launching another frenzied assault. The cavern's boss began to wail, desperately begging them to intervene and stop the crazed attackers. Faced with a cascade of valuable drops, the protagonist's excitement surged, as he believed the very skill book he'd been desperately seeking had finally dropped. The scene then shifts to a classroom. Sometime later, Xia Yan displayed an image on the main screen, identifying the secret realm they had ventured into the previous week. She reminded the class that this was the very location of their first brush with the burgeoning legend of the gods. She then reflected internally that the 7 great guilds had unanimously decided against making any public declarations about the gods, opting instead to only disclose information concerning the resources gathered from that secret realm, leaning on Arlita's extensive experience. She was confident this would encourage people to form their own, more profound thoughts regarding the gods. Following this, their primary objective was to ensure everyone understood that humanity had already triumphed over unbelievably powerful adversaries by its own merit. Hanyen commented quietly to his master that this was the right path, teaching believers not to rely solely on divine intervention, but to inspire faith in their very own strength was an act of magnanimity only his master could perform. Shixong observed Ning Feng, a knot of deep concern tightening within him at that very moment. The instructor announced a 15-minute break, and Shixong immediately called out to Ning Feng. He expressed the need for a private word, and they moved to a less populated area. Shixong asked him directly if he knew about judgment achievements. He was stunned when Ning Feng confirmed that he did. He reasoned that this was only to be expected from Assistant Professor Ning Feng, and considered that perhaps the people in his inner circle had already received such honors. At that moment, a strange noise startled the adventurer. Ning Feng explained that it was not a unique achievement, and that although everyone had a chance to obtain it, its epic rarity was still quite remarkable. Shixong realized that Ning Feng's tone was unnervingly relaxed. It was as if he was completely unconcerned with the profound essence of the Holy Spirit required to grant such a power. It seemed that in his eyes, this incredible boon did not even register as a blessing worth considering. He then began to wonder about the people who followed Ningfeng and the sheer scale of benefits they must have already received. Feeling a sharp pang of envy as he looked at his achievement, Shixiong admitted that he was actually quite worried. He voiced his fear that this might be some sort of mechanism to control him, which was why he needed to confirm it. Ningfeng simply reassured him, explaining that it carried no negative effects, and recommended he just continue using it. Hanyen quietly commented to his master, "It seems Shixiong is a little shaken. He originally intended to test you, his master, but in the end, he was the one who was subdued." Ningfeng explained that this was simply human nature and that he was not surprised in the slightest. "Since I never truly trusted him, anything he might discover is something I am perfectly content with him knowing. Moreover," he added, "if he is still willing to help me after this, that will impress me even more." Later, within the halls of the Blue Sharp Guild, Kaylan contemplated the recent events surrounding the Proto. He noted that the situation was truly bizarre. Through their last two encounters, he could distinctly sense that the omnipotent god of law was significantly weaker than before. After all, the entity had been severely wounded in that past battle, and if Kaylan were not meticulously tracking him, it would be almost impossible to capture his unique magical aura. However, what puzzled Kaylan was the god's sudden assault on his secret realm of judgment, a move that openly revealed his own actions. This left him deeply confused. Moreover, every subsequent move the Proto made was becoming increasingly difficult to decipher. He then recalled Shixiong's observation that Ningfeng's strength was truly formidable, yet he never employed any ability that went beyond common knowledge. In most conflicts, he simply relied on conventional attacks, and even the advantages he granted to his allies were, in Kaylan's expert view, considered low-level methods. With all due respect, Kaylan mused, after having experienced true divine power, it was hard to imagine how Ningfeng could even be part of the same conversation. However, the greater enigma was the fact that if Ningfeng truly wished to conceal his identity, why would he ever join the training camp and engage in so many attention-grabbing activities? He wondered if Ningfeng was simply not afraid of being discovered by him. In that moment, an idea crystallized in Kaylan's mind. Perhaps Ningfeng had only managed to obtain one or two artifacts from the omnipotent god of law. Such a theory would explain everything. He knew that an artifact of that caliber could greatly amplify basic attributes, and that boost alone would be more than sufficient in this low-level world. Furthermore, since eliminating the parasitic demons required the use of divinely imbued objects, it would make sense for him to hide the artifact's true nature. Shixiong then questioned Kaylan, asking why someone like Ningfeng would still bother to participate in the training camp. He explains that this is because, without the artifact, Nicholas Feng's own power is deceptively modest. Therefore, he must rely on the training camp to secure any tangible benefits, a fact that excites Kaylan as he reports to his god. He recalls Sylvan's report that Nicholas Feng has a mysterious supporter, and even if this patron is not the omnipotent god of law, they are undoubtedly connected to him. Furthermore, this powerful figure remains hidden in the shadows, maneuvering Price forward as a mere decoy. Meanwhile, at Price's quarters, Helena Yoon asks if he truly believes the divine essence will fall for their ruse. Nicholas Feng replies that the persona of a lucky individual who chanced upon an artifact serves as an exceptionally plausible disguise. Although he admits many of his actions were unintentional, with just a little strategic guidance, their enemies can be led to believe they have unraveled his secret on their own accord, and given the ambiguous situation, the true divine essence of the Holy Spirit is unlikely to act rashly. However, once it arrives at a seemingly logical conclusion through its own analysis, it may finally be provoked enough to break the stalemate. That, he concludes, is precisely why the attempt to lure it into the open is a risk worth taking. At that moment, someone calls out to Price, informing him that dinner is ready. He turns and confirms he is on his way. After getting his food, Price walks through the cafeteria, his path crossing with Sylvan's, who quietly murmurs that the fish has taken the bait. The adventurer then tells him that Kaylan was inquiring whether Price ever operates alone. Nicholas Feng immediately questions Sylvan, asking if Kaylan intends to make his move, while Price is isolated and vulnerable. The adventurer internally muses that this will escalate into a direct confrontation between two gods. Sometime later, within a secret realm, Price readies himself, stating that to make things easier, he specifically selected a remote and secluded domain, hoping his pursuer will be able to find the location. Helena Yoon remarks that perhaps their target is already hiding in the shadows. Awaiting the perfect opportunity, Colin considered the hero's claim that he had already made every possible arrangement. Ningfeng was confident that nothing could go wrong, but Colin, despite all his own deductions, harbored doubts. Based on the information he'd painstakingly gathered, he still couldn't entirely dismiss one terrifying possibility. He suspected Ningfeng might be the legendary omnipotent spellcaster, which made relying on his current avatar an incredibly risky gamble. Colin knew that if he were to act, he would need to devise a much more elaborate and foolproof plan. However, Colin was also keenly aware of the hero's greatest vulnerability: his friends. He shifted his focus to the realm where they had gathered. He had absolutely no intention of confronting Ningfeng in a direct battle without a guaranteed victory. Yet, he also knew that even while the hero was preoccupied, he was still meticulously tracking his friend's safety. Colin remembered vividly how Ningfeng valued his friends so deeply he would willingly create powerful enemies just to protect them. A cruel thrill of excitement began to build within Colin as he realized the people he was observing were Ningfeng's most cherished friends, and he resolved to capture them first to use as bargaining chips. Even if Ningfeng truly was the omnipotent mage, this despicable tactic would finally give him a fighting chance. By the time Ningfeng could possibly react, it would already be far too late. With this dark resolve, Colin launched himself forward at blinding speed, his hand reaching out to grab the grandson of Lao Feng. In that exact instant, a jagged fissure of pure blackness tore through the air between them, instantly paralyzing Colin's advance. The hero's friends broke into a cold sweat, their eyes locked in terror on the ominous, shadowy tier in reality. A blonde-haired man among them, both intrigued and horrified, commented that the immense power he sensed originated from the dark world. As he frantically questioned what was happening, the hero himself appeared, stepping forth with his signature ability. It was Void Tread, a technique allowing for instantaneous travel to a marked location. He turned his gaze upon Colin, his voice dripping with contempt. "For a being who calls himself a god, you only seem to target the innocent." With a menacing glare, Ningfeng made it chillingly clear that, fortunately, he had arrived just in time. He was fully conscious of his own monstrous deeds, and for that very reason, he had already made preparations. Just as anticipated, Kaylan shrieks, demanding to know if he stands before an all-powerful mage. Kalis begins to unleash his shadowy power, turning to Aiden to ask if he believes it's truly possible for his own ability to influence and protect those close to him. The Ice Demon responds with a question of his own, asking if he is referring to that one fateful incident. Aiden admits he isn't certain, as he has only ever attempted it once. Kalis's mind flashes back to the moment he chose special abilities for his trusted friend. He had selected the Apocalypse of the Divine Scriptures, a power where the chosen follower receives the very blessings of the gods, allowing them to shatter their own limits and dramatically increase their strength. He recalls that this ability contains a unique blessing, known as Shadow Protection, which grants his followers premonitions and advanced shielding when they are in grave danger. More importantly, since he is the one granting this divine protection, he too can sense that danger in advance. It was for this very reason he planned to travel with Yua and the others to test the true effects of this blessing. If it worked, he would never again have to worry for their safety. As they lock eyes across the battlefield, Kaylan concludes that this is no time for hesitation. Even if it means sacrificing the very avatar he currently inhabits, he must test the true depths of Kalis's strength. Taking one final, deep breath, Kalis unleashes his terrifying power. He makes it painfully clear to Kaylan that he is unworthy of being called a god. However, by the time the golden-haired being realizes his mistake, it is already far too late. He is struck down by Kalis's devastating ability, Eye of the Storm, as he watches Kaylan being utterly consumed by its power. Kalis wonders if his foe will truly be vanquished, knowing this was his first real battle in the world of darkness. Wary of any unexpected developments, he had held absolutely nothing back. Aiden, stunned by his master's overwhelming attack, mutters that not even a god could have withstood such a direct hit. The Ice Demon vividly recalls witnessing a similar power once before, deep within the secret realm of judgment, where he was ambushed and struck down by a forbidden curse unleashed by the true Holy Spirit. Yet, incredibly, with but a single healing draught, his body was completely restored in an instant. At that moment, Alaric appeared as an invincible deity, a god of immense power. He remarked that he never anticipated the true Holy Spirit would possess Colin's body to invade his world directly. Therefore, he hoped that this confrontation would suppress the entity, securing enough time for him to continue growing stronger. Meanwhile, within the divine realm, at the glorious monument where the true essence holds sway, the essence of the Holy Spirit violently snapped back into its original vessel. The divine being let out a piercing scream and collapsed to its knees, as guards rushed anxiously to its side. They asked if it was harmed, but seething with rage, the entity bellowed for everyone to leave its presence immediately. The true essence simply could not comprehend what had just transpired, finding the events utterly impossible. It began to question how the Archmage could possibly command the very power of darkness. Never before had it detected even a whisper of such a formidable aura emanating from him. The being reflected that not even the 7 Chaos Gods had wielded the power of darkness with such mastery, and a chilling apprehension gripped it. It considered the terrifying possibility that the Archmage had mastered the very power they had relentlessly pursued for eons. If that were true, the entity knew with grim certainty that it must alert the other deities at once. However, it was acutely aware that it could not allow them to witness its current, vulnerable condition. Some would undoubtedly seize this opportunity to exploit its weakness, a fact that it knew all too well. This realization ignited a fresh wave of fury, and it began to unleash its wrath, destroying everything in sight. Later, at the Azure Blade Guild, Eileen gracefully stepped out of the carriage, followed by Sean, who took in the surroundings. He commented that after being confined to the infirmary for so many days, it felt liberating to finally be back. Upon his return, Kaylan turns to Aiden, his gaze sharp, questioning if any had dared to stir trouble in his absence. Aiden assures him that all has been quiet. He clarifies that, while the guild's ranks have thinned, with many choosing to depart, those who remain walk through the guild hall with their heads held low. Kaylan's voice is firm as he tells his younger brother to pay no mind to the deserters, reminding him that their true source of power, the secret realm of judgment, still endures. With unwavering resolve, he urges Aiden to dedicate himself to their cause, proclaiming that their influence will rise from the ashes, more formidable than ever. A cold sweat slicks Aiden's skin as an internal battle rages should he confess to his brother about the divine being that appeared, the true essence of the Holy Spirit. He knows Kaylan would leap at any chance to secure a god's favor. The thought of Kaylan becoming a deity's most trusted warrior hangs in the air, but just then, his brother's eyes fall upon their sacred realm. Kaylan's confidence evaporates as he witnesses the ruin of the realm of judgment, a raw, urgent demand tearing from his throat. What in the heavens happened here? Later, a shaken Aiden contacts the proctor, relaying the grim discovery, and the proctor listens intently to the unfolding crisis. He calmly asks if the realm of judgment has truly been sealed off for good, to which the blonde youth, his voice strained with despair, confirms the dire news. He laments that his brother has only just returned, only to face this catastrophic setback, as he was counting on the realm to resurrect their guild's former glory. It is then that Alara's voice joins the conversation, explaining to the proctor that the realm of judgment is a direct extension of the divine domain itself. She describes it as a celestial foothold, a bastion from which the gods spread their faith across countless worlds, and to abandon such a vital outpost voluntarily could only mean one thing. After its momentous battle with the proctor, the true essence of the Holy Spirit made its final choice. It has completely and utterly severed its connection to this world. In other words, it has admitted its utter and total defeat. Aiden is left breathless by the explanation, stammering that, if this is true, then the proctor must be the one who now holds ultimate authority. Professor Ningfang's voice responds with quiet confidence. For now, it would appear so. I believe I have won. As these words sink in, a wave of cold relief washes over Aiden. He offers a silent prayer of gratitude that he never acted on his traitorous impulse, that he did nothing to cross Professor Ningfang. He now clings to the fragile hope that the professor will look upon him favorably, and as if in response, the professor tells Aiden that his assistance has been invaluable. He follows this with a powerful promise. Should Aiden ever find himself in need of anything in the days to come, he need only ask. The blonde-haired boy leaps into the air with sheer relief, shouting that everything is fine, while his brother remains on the ground, lost in despair. Later, at the training grounds, the entire class is assembled, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. Aiden Ning steps forward, remarking that although they have achieved a temporary victory against their foe, the true essence of that divine entity, their work is far from over, and careful planning is now essential. He knows all too well that beyond this one god, others will inevitably turn their gaze upon this world. A faint smile crosses his face as he thanks everyone for placing their trust in him. Standing behind Mark Chang, one of the students thinks of his own brother, imagining his complete and utter disbelief at the recent events. It is Leo, his face a picture of pure joy and shock that the legendary Proda invited him to be part of the inner circle. Before long, they all gather in a meeting room, where Evelyn Wang is completely lost in her thoughts. She is processing the earth-shattering discovery that all the previous inexplicable incidents attributed to the mysterious Grand Chief were actually the work of Aiden Ning, her childhood friend, the boy she called Old Fang. Evelyn knows that Old Fang, the Prota, has never harmed an innocent soul. In fact, his actions have saved countless lives from the shadows. Compared to the volatile and reckless gods, Aiden Ning is infinitely more deserving of respect and unwavering trust. A knowing smile plays on Aiden's lips as he senses a silent consensus forming within the room. In fact, the reactions of some have exceeded his wildest expectations. He glances at Leo, who is still overcome with awe. Aiden notes the young man has worn that look of pure reverence from the very beginning, his eyes burning with a fanatical excitement. It's an intensity that is almost overflowing. Drawing their focus, Aiden states his firm conviction that no one present wants to see their world become a mere slaughterhouse for gods to trample at their leisure. He declares that their highest priority is to grow stronger, and quickly, so they can protect Earth with their own power. He then frankly explains that since their world is of a relatively low level and underdeveloped in many aspects, he understood that compared to the countless other worlds he knew of, everyone here had to find a way to evolve. And while he had already uncovered several potion recipes from those other realms, it was still tragically insufficient. Yue Wang voiced the question on everyone's mind. Beyond potions, emblems, achievements, and high-level skills, was there another path? Was there any other method? The question hung in the air, and Feng Ning's mind drifted back to a revelation from just a few days ago. He remembered absorbing the essence of Arlita's magic weapon, God's Doom, and in doing so, unlocking a torrent of new memories. Buried within them, he had discovered something profoundly useful. Sensing the shift in his friend, Rui Feng ventured a guess. Could it be enhancement and enchantment? The protagonist gave a solemn nod, confirming his suspicion. He began to explain that these two lost arts were methods for improving equipment, with enhancements boosting the raw, base attributes of an item. Enchantments, on the other hand, could imbue gear with unique, ethereal attributes and extraordinary special effects. Rui Feng considered this, realizing that until now, their entire approach to gearing had been a matter of random chance. This utter lack of flexibility meant that for those in highly specialized professions, finding equipment that was a perfect match was an almost impossible task. He knew that if they could truly modify their equipment and fuse that capability with tactical planning, a whole new dimension of powerful combat strategies could be developed. However, the protagonist interjected with a sobering reality. The problem, he explained, is that both enhancement and enchantment require very specific, rare materials. Materials like mountain copper, mithril, and adamantite. At these unfamiliar names, Rui Feng and the berserker exchanged a puzzled look. Both confessed they had never heard of such things. And that, Feng Ning stated, his voice grim, is the very heart of the problem. To us, these materials are completely unknown, and they can only be found in the deepest, most dangerous secret realms. At that exact moment, a call came through for Old Man Fong, who quickly apologized, saying he needed to take it. Yue, however, was completely captivated. He pressed on, asking if the materials the protagonist mentioned were metallic minerals. He wanted to know what they looked like, his mind racing with possibilities, as the old man spoke quietly in the background. Deeply troubled by the summons, he confirms his immediate departure. He turns to his colleagues, his face grim, announcing a major disturbance caused by an aberrant in the city of Shijiang. Stating his intent to handle it personally, the proctor acknowledges the gravity of the situation and urges him to proceed without delay. Arriving in the city, he's met with a scene of utter devastation, where plumes of smoke rise from fractured buildings and cratered streets. Amidst the wreckage, a fearsome mutant warrior laughs, arrogantly declaring that no one present possesses the power to challenge him. Elder Croft is then briefed that the entity causing this chaos is a figure who mysteriously vanished several years prior. Not only has he recently resurfaced, but to make matters worse, conventional attacks seem to have absolutely no effect on him. Elder Croft calmly approaches the mutant warrior, signaling to his assistant that he is about to conduct an assessment. With a surge of energy, he conjures his signature chaotic flames, launching them directly at his seemingly invincible foe. As the smoke clears from the impact, the warrior stands entirely unscathed. Elder Croft is visibly shaken, unable to comprehend the complete failure of his attack. The warrior lets out a derisive laugh, taunting him. It would appear, old man, your famed magic is utterly useless against me. Wasting no time, Elder Croft unleashes a more powerful technique, his infernal dragon flames, only for the warrior to casually disperse the colossal attack. He scoffs once more, his voice laced with contempt. I warned you. Your power means nothing to me. A sinister smile spreads across the warrior's face as he finally reveals his secret. His entire suit of armor has been forged with mithril. The name of the legendary metal, known for its supreme magic resistance, hangs in the air, leaving the old man utterly stunned. Staggered by the revelation that the warrior is clad in mithril, Elder Croft does the unexpected. He turns and flees the scene. The mutant warrior, baffled by this sudden retreat, shouts after him, demanding to know why the great mage is running away. But this is a tactical retreat. The old man raises his communicator, urgently contacting the proctor. "I believe I found it," he reports, a solid lead on the mithril. Over the channel, the adventurers listen in, confused. They anxiously ask for a situation report, their intel only confirming that the mutant is a foe of unimaginable strength. So much so that even Director Thorne was overwhelmed and had to request backup. However, upon arrival, they find the mutant warrior has already been thoroughly subdued. He now demands to know who his assailant was and why they stripped him of his armor and gear. The Proteus unit is on site, meticulously analyzing the captured mutant warrior's armor. They seek to confirm if it truly contains mithril, while the warrior, his face a canvas of bruises, scoffs at them. He taunts them, claiming that even if they steal his equipment, their efforts will be utterly useless. He explains that all enhanced gear is soul-bound to its user, making it impossible for another to wield its power. Liu Feng's expression hardens, his gaze turning cold as he demands the mutant warrior reveal the source of the mithril. Overcome with terror, the warrior confesses he was chosen by a demon lord and sent to a secret realm for training. He reveals this lord has controlled the hidden domain for years, and that he is not the only one there. The realm, he claims, holds several mines that yield unique minerals capable of powerfully enhancing equipment. A wave of seriousness washes over the entire Proteus unit as they demand the mutant warrior disclose the exact coordinates of this secret realm immediately. After reaching the location the warrior provided, the system interface reveals that entry requires a team-based challenge. It specifies a minimum of 30 participants, prompting Liu Feng to remark that he hadn't anticipated such a massive, 30-person secret domain. Lawrence Feng warns that these large-scale realms are notoriously difficult. He stresses that the sheer number and strength of the enemies within cannot be underestimated, urging everyone to stick together. Lawrence Feng then relays the intel gathered from the mutant warrior. He explains that the secret realm is dominated by orcs, organized into a formidable force of 5 distinct tribes. Their chieftain commands the largest tribe, and only by defeating this leader can they hope to seize control of the entire domain. With that declaration, he turns and steps through the shimmering portal, beckoning everyone to follow him into the unknown. Meanwhile, a secured transport vehicle speeds down a desolate road, its lone passenger, the captive mutant warrior, consumed by chilling, uncontrollable laughter. The guards, unnerved, demand to know the source of his amusement. He coolly replies that it is nothing of consequence. He claims he merely recalled a humorous memory, but within the confines of his own mind, a far darker thought was taking root. He was imagining the pure, unadulterated terror that would paint their faces the moment they stepped into the secret realm. Inside that very realm, a gruesome sacrificial ritual unfolds, the air thick with the grim evidence of countless offerings to a dark power. The assembled orcs roar with savage ecstasy as our hero emerges, his eyes immediately scanning the brutal architecture, wondering if this was some sort of gladiatorial pit. Suddenly, a cold, emotionless system notification invades their minds, announcing their arrival at the bloody arena, a place where only one combatant would be left alive. The directive was clear. They must eliminate the beasts caged within the arena. The group's cleric grows pale with worry. She voices the terrifying question on everyone's mind. Would they be forced to fight one another? Evelyn wastes not a second, instantly equipping her formidable bow. At the same time, Marcus summons a torrent of flames. Both unleash their power against the shimmering barrier, only to see their efforts absorbed without a scratch. Guttural laughter erupts from the orcs, their mocking shouts echoing through the arena, comparing the humans to tiny insects trying to escape their enclosure. At that very moment, several imposing orcs observe them with predatory gazes. Their powerful leader rises to his feet, taking a deep, commanding breath. The elderly man in the group gasps in recognition, his voice filled with shock as he shouts a warning. He reveals that the 5 orcs before them are the chieftains of their respective tribes. The system's voice then returns, informing them that inside this arena, there are no friends, only mortal enemies, and that the final countdown to the brutal battle would begin momentarily. A confident smile touches our hero's lips. He grips his sword, and with a single, fluid motion, he strikes the barrier, shattering it into a million pieces. One of the orc leaders is visibly stunned, his eyes wide with utter disbelief at seeing the crimson-hued light barrier, obliterated with a single blow. Radiating a terrifying aura, our hero commands everyone capable to flee the arena at once. Later, deep within the Beastman tribal lands, the orc chieftain stands humbled before the man who shattered his arena, preparing to guide him forward. Inside the forge, where raw power was hammered into steel, he revealed that the mountain copper, mithril, and adamantite Leo had asked about were all secured in the adjacent warehouse. As a smith began to work the metal, he was startled when his leader's voice barked, calling him an imbecile. He commanded the blacksmith to steady his trembling hands, warning him not to bring shame upon their tribe in front of their guest. Leo grew pensive, observing the process closely and asking, "So, this is the nature of your equipment enhancement?" The orc affirmed that it was their ancestral technique, a statement that caused the leader to look slightly uncomfortable. He turned to Leo, cautiously asking if the demonstration was to his satisfaction, while the blacksmith watched, intrigued. The smith wondered why the tribe's leader, their strongest warrior chief, was behaving so humbly before mere humans. The orc leader's mind reeled back to the mortal terror he had felt when the human mage first unleashed his power. He remembered the chilling certainty that had he hesitated for even a fraction of a second longer, he would have been utterly obliterated. Fortunately, his swift surrender had been his salvation. Leo, his curiosity piqued, understood that the world from which he came lacked any technique of this kind, a skill impossible to replicate due to the deep-seated differences in race and power. The realization dawned that they would never be able to learn it, which led him to a new line of thought. He wondered if forging an alliance with the orcs might be a wiser path, and just then, the orc leader offered a broad smile. He declared that it would be a profound honor for their tribe to provide their equipment enhancement services. He then implored Leo to leave the entire matter in their capable hands, a sudden decision that stunned the onlookers. Leo considered how quickly they had acquiesced, agreeing to the terms without even broaching the subject of payment. He mused on their typical strategy when conquering a hidden realm, which involved eliminating the chief and establishing control with seals. But given how remarkably cooperative this chief had been, he couldn't just follow protocol and annihilate them. Despite the truce, Ethan asserts that a monster remains a monster, and that placing their complete trust in them would be a grave mistake. The chieftain pounds his chest, urging Ethan to set aside his worries, and proposes they seal their pact with a binding blood oath. With the terms set, Ethan extends his hand, and the orc leader mirrors the gesture. As their palms meet, the blood contract flares into existence. However, a strange, unsettling energy courses through the leader, and he immediately demands to know what is unfolding. Ethan's eyes dart to his system interface, trying to decipher why his apocalypse ability activated of its own accord. The chieftain frantically examines the pact, his eyes widening in horror as he realizes it states he has pledged absolute loyalty to Ethan. Furthermore, he had obtained this binding contract for free, while the pact itself demanded enhanced equipment from him as a tribute. The orc is thunderstruck by this revelation of Ethan's true nature and immediately drops to his knees in submission. His mind spirals, concluding that, since the contract was a gift, Ethan must be one of the 7 legendary demon gods. He then addresses Ethan, admitting he does not know which dark deity he is, but begs for mercy for any disrespect he has shown. A wave of awkwardness washes over Ethan as he wonders how casually signing a contract somehow got him promoted to demon god status. He knows, however, that this title is precisely how monsters refer to one of the 7 malevolent gods of their lore. The orc leader remembers their sacred traditions, how they have always offered life, chaos, and destruction to the heavens, but for all their sacrifices, they never received a response. Who could have imagined that the true offering this time, required by this living demon god, would be something so mundane, so achievable? It was nothing more than the simple task of providing superior gear. He then has an epiphany. If they wish to ascend in power, they must present the correct offerings to worship this demon god and continuously receive the blessings of darkness. Finally, he marvels at the fact that he never imagined he, of all beings, would receive the direct favor of a god. He, Hargun, must have been secretly blessed by destiny to become the leader who would forge this divine connection for his people. With this conviction burning in his heart, he begins to revere Ethan with fanatical devotion, leaving the young man completely stunned by the unexpected turn of events, and wonders why the orc leader continues to revere him with such devotion, yet feels a wave of relief, knowing this pocket dimension shields them, concealing the astonishing events from the outside world. Proda instructs Hargun to keep his identity a secret once they depart, and the orc pledges, vowing to obey his master's every command. With that settled, Proda approaches the chieftain, gently retracting his power, and as reality settles back, a broad smile spreads across the leader's face. He announces that the equipment enhancement will require some time, and, since this is their first visit, he extends a heartfelt invitation to a grand welcoming banquet, a gesture that leaves the other orcs bewildered by their leader's sudden change in demeanor. Murmurs of confusion ripple through the tribe as night descends and a massive bonfire crackles to life, painting the camp in flickering light. The cleric, thoroughly delighted, eagerly anticipates the feast, her eyes gleaming with the promise of roasted meats. Nearby, the old warrior Lao Feng is in high spirits, sharing a drink with a fellow orc, but a moment of quiet reflection soon overtakes him. He muses that he never dreamed humans could ever share a fire in peace with so-called monsters, while Proto watches Shixiong from afar, noting the man's perpetually unreadable expression, a stark contrast to the orc leader, who is lost in his own thoughts. The chieftain recalls his initial doubt, wondering how such frail companions were worthy of standing beside a being of immense power, but he had come to a profound realization. He understood that the gods worked in mysterious ways, weaving a tapestry far too intricate for him to comprehend. Because of this divine plan, he resolved to become Prota's most faithful servant, no matter what sacrifice was required. Later, the blacksmith interrupts the festivities, announcing that the first set of magically enhanced equipment is finally ready. A mystical prompt immediately resonates, asking those who would claim these weapons if they consent to the sacred ritual of soul binding, an irreversible process. Once bonded, the item becomes an extension of its wielder, forever exclusive and unchangeable. As Wang Yue steps forward to claim his bow, he gasps in awe, remarking that the weapon's attributes have surged to a level 10 times greater than before. She adds that such a degree of improvement is something most people could never achieve in an entire lifetime of cultivation. At that very moment, the orc chieftain senses a sinister aura of dark power. He suddenly roars, proclaiming that he can feel the very power he has yearned for his entire life. However, the malevolent energy begins to envelop Aiden, and he soon hears a voice ask who dared to awaken it. Our hero's expression turns serious as he wonders why someone is speaking directly inside his mind. The voice continues to echo within his consciousness, and this time, it issues a single command: submit. Yet, Aiden mentally tells the voice to be silent, channeling his own formidable power within his mind. As he questions who in the world is screaming inside his head, a strange creature takes form within his personal shadowy dimension. The entity begins to question what has happened and where it is, just as Aiden himself appears within the dimension. The furious creature demands to know who he is, but Aiden, thoroughly unimpressed with what he sees, replies that he is the one who should be asking that very question. The creature's demeanor grows even more severe, questioning how our hero dares to defile the divine. It then introduces itself as Zaros, one of the 7 demon gods, claiming its power is far beyond the comprehension of a mere mortal. Aiden recalls hearing Alara mention this name before. Zaros asks if this is his first time beholding a true god, but tells him not to be afraid, as beings from lower worlds like his are naturally lacking in knowledge. It declares that if Aiden worships it, he will be granted the gift of divine protection. At that moment, Aiden's memory clicks into place, and he informs the creature that he personally eliminated it during the Great War, the conflict between the 12 major gods and the 7 demon gods. Zaros is left utterly stunned. It demands that our hero explain himself and reveal his true identity. Aiden, however, just feels annoyed, commenting that the creature is far too noisy and wondering how best to silence it. Just then, a system screen begins to appear. Proctor beholds the scene, trying to make sense of the chaos as a furious Jason C. confronts him. Jason demands Proctor look him in the eye and answer for his actions, but Nolan Fang intervenes, unleashing his own power and commanding the creature to fall silent. A silent message appears in Proctor's mind. The system informs him that his third transformation, the cocoon break task, is now ready. He has a mere 20 days to complete it. Should he fail, the penalty is nothing less than the complete erasure of the host. Nolan Fang is captivated by this revelation. Meanwhile, in the distant realm of the gods at Mingyao Stella, a guard rushes in, calling for his lord. Irritated, the lord reminds him of his strict orders not to be disturbed under any circumstances. However, the guard insists the matter is of the utmost importance, reporting that emissaries from the dwellings of lost souls have arrived. Moro and the Eternal Morning Star, 2 powerful gods, have come seeking an audience. They bring stunning news, claiming they have discovered a way to achieve the impossible: the fusion of division. After entering, the god from the dwelling of lost souls questions Lord Shang about his visibly unwell appearance. Beside him, the goddess of the Eternal Morning Star's dwelling remains a silent, enigmatic figure. Lord Shang dismisses the concern, insisting that everything is fine. He claims a few minor issues have simply surfaced that need resolving, then deftly changes the subject, asking if their research has yielded any discoveries. In response, the goddess raises her hand, and a wave of immense power radiates from her, causing Lord Shang to cry out in shock. He immediately recognizes what he is witnessing: the unmistakable aura of a demon god. She explains that such power is a fragment from the division of one of the 7 ancient demon gods, and although her own divinity fusion is less than 10% complete, she can feel her understanding of the universe's fundamental laws has already profoundly deepened. She can now even command a measure of dark power. Morrow, the Requiem of Souls, clarifies that based on his observations, this fusion is stable for now, but fully absorbing another divinity will be a long and perilous journey. Still, he declares with conviction that this is, at the very least, definitive proof that the path they are on is the correct one. The God of the essence of the Holy Spirit is stunned, coming to the staggering conclusion that the theories of the omnipotent mage were true after all. He must have arrived at the same chilling conclusion, suspecting the mage had seized the divinity of the demon god, Shi Jin, and by some unknown method, fused it into himself. He concedes with frustration that they are falling behind yet again. All the while, Proda, blissfully unaware, continues to surge frustratingly ahead of them. Since he can never be an ally to the major gods, they will eventually have no choice but to orchestrate his destruction. In a quiet moment, as an adventurer politely serves him tea, Proda is lost in thought. He mulls over his recent accomplishment of reaching level 90 and the careful preparations he's made for this very day. His singular focus has been to undertake the third transformation advancement mission, but unexpectedly, he was met with an unforeseen crisis. The mission is tailored for the all-element mage class. It carries several demanding requirements, beginning with entering the secret realm of the Whispering Jungle. He is tasked with acquiring the insignia of nature, collecting 50 transmutation stones, and gathering 150 spiritual wood sprouts. The mission carries an S-rank difficulty, and the time limit is a mere 15 days. However, the trouble started a few days ago at the hidden entrance to the Whispering Jungle's secret realm. The portal itself began to act erratically, concerning the adventurers stationed nearby. They conveyed to Proda that they understood his predicament, but regretfully, something was deeply amiss with the secret realm. Just days earlier, the entrance to the realm had vanished completely, a shocking event that a stunned Ning Fang was determined to investigate. Hanyen is the one who informs Proda that this ominous event is likely a precursor to a demonic tide. He explains that after amassing enough energy, some secret realms will enter a brief, dormant state. This period of inactivity serves to fortify themselves, and once this strengthening phase concludes, the entrance to the secret realm will manifest once more, often several times larger than before. It will then unleash a massive number of monsters to invade the land, a phenomenon grimly referred to as the demonic tide. He then stresses a crucial point: the longer a mystical realm lies dormant, the more cataclysmic the monster invasion will be upon its return. If mismanaged, the consequences could be devastating. Deeply worried about the deadline for his third transformation mission, Leon turns to Hayden for answers. He questions how long it might take for the realm's entrances to reappear, but Hayden can only offer an apology, admitting his own ignorance. Leon reflects inwardly that even a being as powerful as the Ice Demon has limited knowledge of divinity. Yet, he finds reassurance in the fact that his system has assigned a mission of such paramount importance, it would not forsake him now. Leon considers it his duty to inform the other adventurers about the approaching demonic tide. This would give them the crucial time they need to prepare. With his mind made up, Leon takes a calming breath and sips his tea. Observing him, the adventurer is struck by how utterly incredible the young man before her is. After her captain relayed the information he had provided, the higher-ups treated it with the utmost gravity. They didn't just appoint him to the position of Supreme Commander, they also dispatched dedicated personnel to support his every move. Who could have possibly imagined that, amidst such escalating chaos, he would be sitting there, serenely drinking tea? Furthermore, the three formidable leaders of the great guilds had personally volunteered to spearhead the effort. Reporting on the situation, the adventurer informs Lady Lyra of a logistical challenge. Evacuating everyone as planned will demand an immense amount of time and a considerable workforce. But Lady Lyra's resolve is unshaken, stating they must proceed, for as their leader had specifically instructed, failure to manage this crisis properly would lead to catastrophic damage. The adventurer is taken aback by her conviction. He affirms that he will make the arrangements immediately. Just then, a deafening roar shatters the sky, capturing everyone's attention. A colossal portal tears open in the heavens, and from its swirling depths, countless monstrous beings begin to pour forth. Meanwhile, deep within the secret realm of the Whispering Jungle, a shadowy creature poses a question to its priest. The priest, utterly certain in his decision to rupture the veil ahead of schedule, questions his subordinate's palpable fear. He reminds the acolyte of Lord Volkov's undeniable call, his voice rising to a zealous roar as he proclaims their master, Lord Valerius, is close at hand. To earn his master's favor, he thunders, they must present their offerings of life without a moment's delay. In stark contrast, back in the human world, The adventurers are consumed by absolute chaos. Desperate shouts for an emergency evacuation echo through the streets, herding the panicked masses toward the shelters. The monstrous legion continues to spill from the rift, its numbers swelling by the second as winged beasts cackle from above. They mock the fleeing mortals as terrified sacrifices, some even proposing a wicked wager on who can reap the most souls. Yet, as they dive toward their helpless prey, a sudden, concussive blast of frost erupts from below, shattering their attack. The chilling explosion engulfs several invaders, forcing the surviving creatures to recoil in shock and disbelief. Their confusion hangs heavy in the frigid air just as the protagonist makes his dramatic entrance onto the battlefield. He coolly observes that the invading creatures are hardly invincible, and Aiden begins to explain the hidden truth of the situation. This demonic tide, he reveals, is not merely a catastrophe. For those who successfully defend against it, it is a grand opportunity. Victory promises a wealth of experience and unimaginable rewards, a fact that galvanizes the entire team for the coming battle. Aiden feels a thrill of anticipation, his mind already calculating the immense surge in power that awaits them. Watching from the periphery, an adventurer assisting with the patrol fixes his gaze upon the protagonist's determined group. He recognizes their insignia, knowing they hail from the 7 great guilds, humanity's supposed elite. Though they are humanity's vanguard, he has seen even the strongest warriors fall like fragile lambs against such overwhelming darkness. He has watched countless comrades risk their lives against these powerful enemies, only to fall one by one. He despairs, wondering if this brutal, unending war is their only destiny, until he is stunned by the unwavering resolve in their eyes. They stand ready for the fight, a sentiment perfectly embodied by Kaylan, who charges into the fray without a shred of hesitation. He roars with exhilaration, proclaiming it's been ages since he's had a real battle, feeling reborn in the fires of combat. Nicholas Feng observes with satisfaction, noting the successful deployment of the first batch of high-grade potions. Paired with the reinforced equipment, which was in extremely limited supply, their strategy was unfolding perfectly. Prioritizing these assets for the elite forces of the 7 great guilds was, without a doubt, the correct strategic call. He also muses that this chaotic, large-scale battlefield is the perfect proving ground for a new kind of power. Just then, a monstrous beast lunges forward, only to be met by a decisive, piercing strike straight through its skull. The adventurers surrounding Willow Yue watch in awe. Her arrow found its mark perfectly from within the creature's blind spot. She coolly remarks that the enemy should never assume she is blind to them, not while her enchanted item grants an additional 8 points in agility. It also sharpens her vision and accuracy by 20 points each, and provides a staggering 30% boost to her experience gain. The protagonist believes this battlefield is the ultimate stage for his friends, shouting for them to unleash their newfound strength. In response, Ethan Zhang and Rachel Fang activate their monster cleaner artifacts, which glow with power for a limited time. These items surge their primary attribute by 5 points and bestow a 30% damage bonus against a specific type of foe. The party's cleric joins the symphony of power, activating her own relic to weave potent buffs across her teammates. This empowers them to cut down 10 consecutive enemies within a fleeting window of time, a true storm of destruction. The artifact's effect grants an additional 8 points to her spirit attribute and quickens her skill casting speed by 15%. An enemy general stares in utter disbelief, screaming that this is impossible. Recalling the High Priest's promises of victory, he bellows that they are all warriors, blessed by the divine Lord Silas, yet he can only watch helplessly as his allies fall one by one. His mind races in panic, questioning how their sacred offensive could possibly be halted by these mere mortals.